I'm going to call to order this regular meeting of the Public Safety, Civil Rights, and Emergency Management Committee. Today, January 15th, 2014, I am Councilmember Blong Yang, Chair of the committee. With me today are the following committee members. Councilmember Cam Gordon, the Vice Chair, Councilmember Abdi Warsami, and Councilmember Lene Palmisano. We have 3 items on the agenda today, all submitted by the police department, 2 of which are consent items as follows. The first one is the General Mills grant, and it's asking for us to authorize acceptance of grant funds of $30,000 from General Mills to support program costs related to community engagement, youth violence, education, and related policy, and approve appropriation increase. The second item is the Joyce Foundation to authorize acceptance of grant funds of $30,000 to support the position of Community Engagement Coordinator and other project costs, and to approve the appropriation increase. Committee members, does anyone wish to pull items number 1 or 2 from the discussion? Okay. If not, I'd like to ask if there is a motion to approve the staff recommendations.
I'll move approval.
Thank you. Just a voice vote? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion passes. Next, we have for discussion item number 3, and I'm going to read that really quickly, and then we're going to have Assistant Chief Matt Clark present. The third piece is training services for cadet recruit training, and it's to accept proposal from the Hennepin County or Hennepin Technical College for training services for cadet recruit training to be conducted in the spring of 2014 for up to 35 pre-selected police cadet recruit candidates and to enter into a contract for services. So Assistant Chief Matt Clark, can you introduce yourself and a little bit about yourself, and then just continue with the presentation?
Yep, I'm Assistant Chief Matt Clark with the Police Department. Mr. Chair and council members, thanks for considering this RFP today. My job is that I run daily operations for the Police Department and work in conjunction with our Finance Director, Robin McPherson, and Wendy Guck on items like this for the council. The cadet program is one of 3 programs we have for hiring police officers for the city of Minneapolis. The other 2 are the recruit program and the CSO program. And essentially for the cadet program, one of the best things about it is we don't take just individuals who have a strictly law enforcement background or focus. We're hiring folks that have diverse backgrounds. Some folks come to us with business degrees. Some folks come to us with other social services degrees, and there's a wide variety, and what we get is a healthy dose of diverse backgrounds. We also get quite frequently a good selection of diversity along with the candidates that apply for this position. And in this cadet program, what we do is we take those individuals who have at least a 2-year degree, and we put them through an accelerated degree program where they receive all of the mandated training that the state has. A post program, which you'll become familiar with if you're not already familiar with, is our licensing program. There's specific educational requirements to take our licensing exam, and we give them that accelerated education and then put them through the exam process. In addition to that, then they have a academy which they need to go through, and it's about 2.5 months.
And
So-
is that program with Hennepin Technical College?
Mr. Chair, there are a number of programs in the state, but the Hennepin Technical College program is the only local one and the one that we'd want to use just for accessibility. There's some in Hibbing, some in Alexandria. I believe there's also one in Mankato around the state. I think it's a total of 8 last time I heard, but this is the local one that we need to use that would provide those educational requirements for the post board.
Council members, any questions? Councilmember Gordon.
Thank you very much. I was just curious if anybody else responded to the RFP, or was this the only entity that responded?
Mr. Chair, Councilmember Gordon, my understanding is that's the only school that put in a request.
And as I recall, they've done this in the past for us, so it's...
Mr. Chair and Councilmember Gordon, that's correct. I kind of worked on the last RFP with Wendy Gook and ran the academy at the time that we renewed this. And again, they were the only ones that had put in for it, again, because of the locality.
Thank you very much. And if it's appropriate, I'd be happy to move approval of this item.
Any other questions or comments? Go to Councilmember Palmisano.
Hi, Chief Clark. Could you tell me why 35 officers was the RFP written? Why was the RFP written for 35 officers, and have those officers already been? Have those cadets already been selected?
Mr. Chair and Councilmember, we have done the backgrounds on approximately 60-plus cadet candidates, and the selections were made actually today by the Chief Harteau on those individuals. And the reason we picked 35 is we're never sure with the budget how many we can put into the system. We'd like to do more. We know a lot. There's a lot of publicity about the number of officers that are retiring throughout the state as well as with the police department. But we're always going to base that on what our projections are for attrition. And so we put it at 30. I believe we're at about 30 right now, but we're waiting to hear back from those candidates on their response. So I don't have a specific number for you today.
Councilmember Gordon.
That prompts another question, and maybe you really don't know the answer to this, but I know that in the past, this has been one of our keys to getting more diversity on the force. And do you have any previews of the diversity of this cadet class? Are you aware of what it is? And
Mr. Chair and Council Member, I don't have the specific information on that. That's part of that hiring process through the city's civil service process, and we don't necessarily get all that information. We will have that for you usually as the class starts, but then a lot of times that's a self-identifier for those individuals, so we don't necessarily want to come out and say that this is what we have for diversity. We would rather that you be the judge on some of that.
well, whenever information comes forward, we'll be excited to learn more details in the most appropriate way.
Councilmember Warsame.
Yes, Chief. Can you briefly go over how the cadets were chosen? I mean, what criteria you used to choose the 30 cadets that you have over the 60 that applied?
Mr. Chair and Council Member, we usually go through the city's civil service process where we have an interview. They also apply through the standard application process through the city. In addition to that interview, then what we do is we send them through a background process. There's also, once we do conditional job offers, there's additionally some drug testing involved and some psychological testing as well.
Any other questions? I have one last question. You know, with regards to, you know, the potential attrition through retirement and those sorts of things, how soon can I guess training services for cadet and recruits start? Let's say for this one, it's going to happen, let's say pretty soon, but I mean, how soon can you restart that? Or can you do that every 3 months, 6 months, every year? How does that work in terms of cadet classes?
Mr. Chair, council members, we kind of have planned that out. We've pre-planned that with the help of our finance director and our deputy chief of professional standards. The chief is very specific at looking at that pre-planning. And as you know from some of the presentations we've given you, it takes a long time to get our folks through the process. And especially these folks because they're doing the educational and licensing piece along with our academy and our field training. What we've planned out is in January, usually we'll hire community service officers, and we've done that this year, about 20 of those. Those folks, as they get through their educational requirements, kind of bleed into our academy system, as you will. With this March hiring, that's when we basically have this class starting in March. We're looking at another 30 officers to get through the program. That takes about 6 months. And then we're looking at a recruit class, anywhere from 20 to 30 officers, depending on attrition and our budget. in October. We'd like to consistently have those 3 hirings going on each year, give or take how things look. And as you know, there is a change in our pension system. It's really something that we're not sure about as we get into the spring months, whether we're going to have a large amount of retirements or not. It's something we're not obviously going to go to our employees and our officers and say, do you intend to retire? That's something that they need to decide on their own and then come forward with as they enter that kind of phase. But the big advantage to retiring now is there's a lot less of a reduction on their pension. And so many of them are considering it, but we're not sure what those numbers are going to be. So it's very hard to predict, at least at this stage in the game in 2014.
Okay. Okay. Councilmember Palmisano?
Chief Clerk, one additional question. Well, 2 kind of. Is it safe to say then, or reasonable to say that the people that are starting this program then would be ready to graduate from this program and become active law enforcement people in our force at the end of September?
Mr. Chair and council member, that's correct. It would be approximately 6 months. This used to be about a 9 to 10 month program. We've worked extensively with Hennepin County and their program to reduce that amount of time because there was some repetition of training, and we were able to change that up about 10 years ago when Wendy Guck and I worked on some of those things and changing that program. But it's something very similar to what State Patrol does, and they've kind of modeled it, some of their stuff after what we did, and we've in turn looked at what they've done as well.
And that kind of starts into the second part of my question, which is, can you tell me a little bit more of what changes have been made on a training level in this program over time? So you've condensed some of it, you've made it more similar to state kinds of programs, but are there any other curriculum changes?
Mr. Chair and council member, I've met with Post Board and as recently as last year, I should say 2 years ago, to talk about what their learning objectives are. And we modeled our training after those learning objectives to make sure that we had those educational pieces met. The examples of redundancy was that we would usually send our officers through a range qualification course that takes about 2 weeks, but then the Metro course would also do the same. And we really don't need to duplicate the firearms training that they get. We really only need to do it once. And the agreement was that some of their instructors would assist ours in the training, so we were kind of doing it at the same time. Similar for use of force. One of our officers teaches at the school, so we kind of combined the teaching that we would have given them in the academy with the teaching they would have received at the school by the same officer. So that allowed us to shrink that amount of time to what you have now, which is 6 months.
Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Chief Clerk. Is there a date certain that people have to make this decision about retiring? And so we'll have some concrete numbers?
Mr. Chair and Council President, I don't have the specific date. There is one in this spring where related to your age and the years of service, you need to start making a decision. And then each year after that, the amount that you lose for leaving early increases.
Oh, okay. So every year that you stay on longer, okay. You decrease your. It's an incentive to not retire early.
Mr. Chair and Council President, that's correct. If you
Versus the way it is now.
right,
Yeah,
that's
okay.
correct.
Councilmember Gordon?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to note that in my experience on the council, we have had some periods where we've gone years without a cadet class. So there really isn't a steady expectation of when we're going to get a new class. I think there was some hard economic times when actually the force was declining a little bit and we weren't needing cadets, so we weren't trying to recruit and train anybody because they wouldn't have a job at the end. So this is nice and good and exciting. But you were kind of asking about the routine, and it seems like it's very flexible, and sometimes there's no need, and sometimes there's more efforts made. And I think we're actually in a good time, kind of because of potential retirements and the way the workforce is going, or maybe it's a challenging time, but there's an opportunity for more people maybe to join the force in the next few years than there has been in the past, and I just wanted to note that.
Thank you. So, Assistant Chief Clark, anything else?
Mr. Chair and council members, one other item is the thing that about the cadet selection process that does help us is we have rule of the list, where we can select from the list. And one of the things that restricts us when we hire recruits, and recruits are individuals that have already received all of their training on their own and have passed the state licensing or post exam. That list for recruits is rule of 3. We can only skip 3 individuals, and sometimes there's some tough decisions that need to be made, but with the cadet program, we can kind of select from that entire list, which helps us with picking a diverse group and a group that best fits what I believe the city wants for a police officer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the staff recommendations? Councilmember
Just,
Johnson.
Chief, then you tweak something in my thoughts then. Do we ever do any analysis? I mean, it might be interesting. Now, how long have we had this 3-pronged process in place where we've used community service officers, recruits, and cadets?
Mr. Chandler and Council President, I'm not sure how long that's been in. I've been with the department for 20 years, and I know that that's been what we've offered for positions.
For a while.
And as Council Member Gordon said, there has been changes and ebbs and flows in when we use that. But obviously with this situation, we're going to try to utilize all of our options to make sure our staffing's up and that we have a diverse group that comes into the police department. But
I'm just
I can't
thinking
say.
it might be interesting to do a look back to see where, if we have issues, if there are differences in the different hiring groups. Do you know what I'm saying? Hiring process, yeah. Because it is a different. I mean, like you say, you have rule of 3 on the recruits and rule of the list on the other, more control on rule of the list. So, in our community service officers, I always thought that's been kind of a interesting and productive way to judge people's work ethic, watch them for a number of years before we actually hire them, and so there is some attrition in that happens. So it might be interesting to do a look back.
And Mr. Chair and Council President, I will say clearly we find that we have more diversity when we hire through the cadet program and through the CSO program. It's very clear to us we have a second or third hiring from our recruit list, which isn't as diverse as we've seen, and that is again because we can't pick from the list. So I can't give a specific percentage, but I'll say that it's pretty apparent to me.
Councilmember Gordon.
So I don't think we could start the study now, but that would be interesting to look at longevity of employment, number of complaints, promotions. Be interesting to see, because if we find out somehow it's much better one way or the other, we could keep focusing our efforts there. I think we tend to like the CSO and the cadet class because we imagine we're getting more diverse recruits, and also they can be trained a little more by us, or there's a little more control over that. But we don't really have any evidence that bears it out that it's even more diverse. I mean, it probably is if we think back, but so it would be interesting to dig into a little bit.
Councilmember Johnson? Okay. Well, thank you again, Assistant Chief Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So I am going to apologize, but Councilmember Gordon did make a motion to approve the staff recommendations. And so all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. And that is all we have. So seeing no further business before this committee, we are going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you so much, you all.